Welcome to Make a Difference with Phil Martelli. He is Phil Martelli. I am Jared Phillips. We had to take a bit of a day off here for the Make a Difference podcast because it was a snow day. Everybody took the day off. I mean, we got pretty much pummeled here in the Philadelphia area with snow. And the one thing about that, it's fun. Get a little snow. You get people sledding down the art museum steps. Everyone having fun with it in their own little way. School's getting a bit of a break. But I think the thing that's really cool and really nice to see is like the community effort that you see from people.
Absolutely.
Like, I was just going around yesterday. It took me about 2 hours to dig my car out of the snow, parked out on the street. And, I'm helping some other folks out with theirs, and other people are coming up. Hey, do you need any salt? Anything like that? Like, there's a nice community element when you just get rocked with some snow like that. People tend to chip in a little bit more.
Really well stated by you. And I think there's a group that we know they're there and we're so appreciative. But on this podcast, we have to give a shout out. How about the doctors that got to their hospitals? The nurses, right? The first responders that had to go out on occasion. Can you imagine sitting at home and you have a medical emergency and you look outside and there's nobody moving about? I can consider them community servants. And we have to, on Make a Difference, say thank you. Remarkable. Those plowed drivers. I'll get into, I was coming from Baltimore to Philadelphia and they were stationed. There was no precipitation when I was driving on Saturday into Sunday morning. It started Sunday morning about 3:00, but they were all positioned, knowing that they were basically there they had a 24-hour job. So they couldn't sit down and say, well, the NFL playoffs, or, you know what, it's really cold out here. No. So all of them, the medical people, the public servants that got where they had to get so that we could be safe and secure. Remarkable. And it is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful community spirit. Somebody taking their snowblower across the street. Let me help you out. Okay. The one thing that I do miss, though, we still need those young grade school and high school kids carrying their shovels down the street, knocking on the door, saying, "Can I clean your walk?" When I was growing up in Southwest Philly, there were guys that made a deal with the whole block. They went right down the block, clearing the snow. So
The smart ones were the ones who were entrepreneurial about it, you know?
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had branches like, you have this street, I have that street, and really, but your point about a community spirit, and it's not a sense of gloom. It's really like a joyful experience. The only challenge was the snow came on Sunday, and now we're going to have a couple of days of really, really cold weather. So we have to keep those young school kids safe. And it is one thing that COVID gave us, that people now know that they can do remote learning. I'm not saying it's effective, but they can still do a remote learning, and they don't lose that day in the state count, because you always wanted to know, are we going to lose any of our summer?
It's fair, but also I have to admit, is there a pushback on the other end of snow days kind of don't exist anymore, right? And kids kind of get bumped. I mean, do they still sometimes like?
Oh, sometimes
Monday they got like a true snow day,
true
like just
snow day.
and then Tuesday it's like, all right,
And
ease back in. Yeah.
Let's get some work done.
I was gonna say at least they get like the joy of a good snow day.
But you know what didn't have a snow day?
What's that?
The Martelli Minute.
Of course not.
It comes to you every day. Phil_Martelli on Instagram, 6:30. And even on the snow day, it was, okay, well, what's appropriate here? So here is the Martelli Minute. You get it free. Instagram. Optimism lessens stress. The challenges of weather allow you to be a great neighbor. Be willing to check on others. Be reliable. Be reliable. Someone's counting on you. Quit wishing for better. Get working for better. Fear not the quiet. Pausing often brings about clarity. And then this is a good one leading into our guest. Empty your tank on a daily basis. Our guest has emptied his tank on a daily basis for years and years and years. This is going to be another one. And my guess is it'll be a lengthy one because our guest has a lot to say and has never been reluctant about saying it.
Never been a stranger to the microphone, that's for sure.
No, sir. No, sir. Well, you always challenge me when we do the segment about where I've been, where I'll go. And I'll say that our guest has been to more places and done more appearances than I could ever imagine. He carries the title, the badge, a Philadelphian, a monster sports fan. He's risen to the top of radio, risen to the top of TV. Check this out, because you're a young fledgling. Over 8,000 radio shows, the most in radio history. And he's done it always with passion, but not just passion for sport, passion enough that he's been named Man of the Year, Media Person of the Year, Lifetime Achievement Award, all from his charitable endeavors. In Philadelphia, we know this. Pretzels, water ice, hoagie, and the king. Welcome, Howard Eskin, to the Make a Difference podcast.
Well, I don't think you need to say any more. It's all good. I mean, I can just go off and just start keep on building on all those chapters. Hey, the thing that and thanks for that, for our friendship, and thanks for all you do, and thanks for having me on. But I mean, I just enjoyed it. I mean, I'm a Philadelphian. I'm lucky that I got to work for the most part. I started in right outside Washington, D.C. and was in New York for a while, but almost like 99% of my career was in Philadelphia. So I'm lucky that I've been here because I grew up, as you probably remember, Phil, the 64 Phils goes way back before a lot of people out there. Before Jared, it's just when they blew, what was it, a 6-game lead with 10 games to go.
Let's be accurate here. It was 6.5 with 12 to go. They lost 10 straight, and they won the last 2 games of that season.
I know it was, but anyway, it was just, it's fun through the good times and the bad times. And there's been some really good, and there's been some really bad. But hey, listen, when you had the 76ers, although they may be one of the worst teams now, just accept that for my feelings. They had the worst record. What was it? 9-73, the worst record in NBA history. And I lived through that too. So it's good and it's bad. And I lived through a championship, which was phenomenal. They haven't won one for a long, long time. But those are the kind of things that you really do remember. So being in Philadelphia, being a part of everything that's going on here, and being able to talk to people about it, whether they get mad at me or not, is just part of what I do.
I was going to ask, that was going to be my second question, and I'm still going to leave it in there, but I have to take you back to Ron Hurst, Northeast High. What drew you to media at that point in your life? You're a young guy.
My father was a big sports fan. He played, in the softball leagues when I don't know if they still have the softball leagues, and was in a bowling league, and he did all those things, but he was a big sports fan, had season tickets to the Phillies, the Sixers, the Eagles. I don't know why he didn't have the Eagles, but I went to every game anyway at Franklin Field back when I was a kid. But I always was I always was into sports.
Mhm.
Who would have known that, and I started to think about, I wanted that to be a part of me for what I did for a living. So it goes way back because my father was a sports fan, used to, obviously, as all parents do, they take their kids to games. So it was enjoyable. I'll give you a story which you probably don't even know about. When I was, I guess I was 19 or 20 years old. And my father had tickets on the old front row at the Sixers when they used to be affordable to people. And now they're only for the millionaires. But was sitting there, and Earl Monroe was
Wow.
playing for the Baltimore Bullets. And he always complained. And Earl and I met each other and we became friendly. I can't say we were friends, but this time he came after me because I was beating him, just beating his ear. There was stories in the paper. I wasn't in sports yet. I was still in school. There were stories in the paper. A super fan goes after the Pearl, Earl Monroe. And he came over, and I'll never forget. He came over, he said, I'm going to kick your ass. What the hell are you going to do now? I said, I'm still going to yell at you. So,
And King, we have to like educate the young here. So Jared, Earl Monroe, anything?
I recognize the name. I mean,
Okay.
before my time, sure, but
Philadelphian. Where'd he go to high school? Come on. John Bartram High School. Where did your grandfather go to school? John Bartram High School.
okay.
All right.
That's a fun little fun fact. All right.
There we go. So you delved a little bit into this, but I'm fascinated by this. You're a fan. You grow up a fan. It's in your family. You're a fan. And now all of a sudden, you switch to having to cover the teams. How challenging is that?
you know, I ask players that a lot, and the ones that become very successful are the ones that are honest. And players have to understand that. I mean, Allen Iverson, Larry Brown, and I are friends, and he always used to call him the little guy. Little guy, you know, they created the term flu-like symptoms for Allen Iverson when he partied the night before and was out till 4 in the morning. And I won't say it, but you can just imagine what he was doing. So flu-like symptoms came around when Allen Iverson couldn't practice or couldn't play. It was flu-like symptoms. It's either the flu or it's not the flu. But whatever. So Allen and I got along great at first, and then I started to become honest about some of the things that he didn't do, and when he played, played hard every minute, but his preparation wasn't good, and I would say that, and I actually talked to him. I said, if you want to be, everybody wanted to be like Mike. They always wanted to be Michael Jordan. I said, if you want to be like Michael Jordan, you're going to have to listen to the coach, and you're going to have to do everything that makes you that player. And then he really got angry at me, would give me a lot of crap for years. And now when he sees me, he hugs me, he says, I love you, and I understand what you're doing. So in the end, the moral of that story and the answer to your question is, how do you do it? You've got to be honest. I was told when I first started doing sports talk radio, which was back in 1979, I was working, I was a sports reporter at 1210 Radio before that. And I got a talk show at an FM station, WWDB, which it was 96.5, but those call letters, they don't exist for that station anymore. But somebody told me, hey, listen, you can't be nice to everybody. So you got to be honest. So I learned while I was doing talk radio to be honest. And then when it came to players, I've had a lot of players that were mad at me, wanted to kick my ass, all these things that because I was honest. And I've had a few players come after me. It never did anything. And hey, listen, if we want to talk, you want to talk about it, we talk about it. I remember calling Jason Worth. Charlie Emanuel and I had a little bit of an argument. It was early in the season. The team sucked. They ended up winning the division that year. It was 2007. The team sucked. And it just, you could tell there was something wrong. So in a news conference afterwards, I said to Charlie, because I saw Lou Piniella go after his players when he was manager of the Cubs. And I said, Charlie, you ever going to get real tough with these guys? And he says, you don't think I'm tough enough? Why don't you step into my office? So I did. After that news conference, he made sure I was coming in. He was waiting for me. He goes a different direction to his office than the media went. And I went in there and he came after me in his office. I'll never forget this because he said, you've been killing me for 3 years. And I had to think very quickly. He only had been there a little over 2 years. I says, you haven't been here 3 years. And then he came after him. Milt Thompson grabbed him, came from out behind his desk, grabbed him. He wasn't going to do anything. Davey Lopes was in the office there, and there was a PR guy. And, when he came after me and he grabbed him, I says, I'm done. You can't get mad at me. It's those guys in the locker room you got to get mad at. So then I'm standing in front of a locker. I'll never forget this. A pitcher, another stiff that the Phillies had, Freddie Garcia. He after the game, standing there with the other media members, and Charlie comes walking by, and he looks at me. He says, I should drop you right here. I said, Charlie, why don't you grow up? And Charlie said, I've been growed up. So the next morning I'm on ESPN, and they asked me, did any players say anything to you? I said, there weren't many in the locker room, but one guy named Jason Worth. It was his first year with the Phillies. He started staring me down. I said, who the hell is Jason Worth? He's a marginal major league ball player.
Oh, geez.
So it was his first year. He got minimum. So he waited the whole year. They won the division. He poured champagne on me after the game, not in happiness, but in anger. He says, marginal major league baseball player. I said, you waited all season to approach me about that. After this year, the playoffs are over, we're sitting down and talk for about 45 minutes, and now we're friends because they have to understand what I'm doing. Dick Vermeil, we're good friends. And he didn't like me at first because I thought he was too tough, working the players too hard. And I said that. And he brought my name up in a meeting. Herm Edwards told me, what'd you do to coach? So I said nothing. He ripped me my first day in television. I was at the Maxwell Club. I was at the head table. And he was really angry at me because I questioned what he did in terms of working players hard. And now they can't work the players that long and that hard. He understood it. We ended up working together for a pregame show for preseason football. And now we're good friends, and he understands we check in with each other all the time. I've been to his house. I've been out to dinner with him. But the point is, players, coaches, not initially, but after a while, they have to understand. You're just doing your job. I remember I used to yell at Rolly Massimino at games.
Yes, you did.
And Rolly started screaming at me during the game. And then afterwards, we were fine. But Rolly and I were good with each other. But I would just say what I would think. Digger Phelps, I wasn't a fan of his. It's just, he got to understand that was just me. I thought Digger was a great guy, but I never thought he was a really, really good, more than a good coach. I'll give him a good coach. He always had the players. He had 4 first-round draft picks one year, and he didn't go anywhere in the NCAA tournament. But that's history. And I just look at things, and I talk to people. I've talked to you multiple times, and that's what I do. It's just you try to find out background, what's right to give you background. You never expose anybody for what they've told you, but you have background on what's going on. So after a while, I would say most of the players or coaches understood, and I understood that I had to be honest. It was tough at first, and I know it's tough for players because they're part of that fraternity. But if you're going to be good, you got to be honest. And if you're not honest, people kind of figure you out really fast. Yep.
So as I was reading, obviously we're dear friends, but I was reading, and 2 names jumped out to me. George Michaels, because of what he did for high school sports in Philadelphia.
Yep.
and John DeBella. How did they lift you when you were a young, and you're like all of us young, you had the answers, but these guys really had they had the cheat code, right?
Well, George and I was spinning records. But Jared doesn't remember 45s, doesn't even know what they are. For disc jockeys,
I have a record player for it. They're back.
They are back. Two of my granddaughters got them this Christmas.
So they would call you now a producer, but it was an engineer, would spin the records for George Michael, and you left out Jim O'Brien. Probably he and George Michael were the two most important people in my life because of my career. George always appreciated me. When I got into television, he wanted me to come down and work for him in Washington at the NBC station down there. I did a segment on his national sports show on Sunday nights, the first one, I think, of any national show.
Yep.
For 11 years, it was called Rumorville. And I always had good stories and good, insight into different things. And I had inside information. So I did something for him for 11 years. But he was really important for me. And Jim O'Brien was a disc jockey in the morning before he went to television, was the best television personality in the city of Philadelphia ever, as a weatherman. So he was always a hard worker. Maybe that's where I picked up some of the responsibility and the hard work things that I've always tried to do. But I remember I was doing talk radio, and Channel 3 offered me a job. I never worked television in my life in 1982. And I said, I told Jim, because I always confided in him. I said, Channel 3 offered me a job, and he told me a year earlier I should be in television. I said, Jim, I'm not ready for television. He says, if you don't try to get this job or take this job, I'm going to kick your ass. Wow. I says, because you'll never get this opportunity again in your life. I was hesitant to take it. I went up and did an audition in New York. They didn't want anybody to know I was doing radio, anybody to know that they were talking to me. So I did it. I still have the tape. I've never looked at it since, because I was terrible. And the news director of Channel 3 says, don't worry about it, kid. You'll be fine. They wanted somebody that had opinions, which now television sports people have none. They have opinions. They are honest. They dig. I mean, I've broken so many stories because I worked hard to do it. And my first night in television, September 20th, 1982, I was the lead story of my first newscast on Channel 3 because the NFL players called a strike. And 51 minutes, I'll never forget looking at the clock, 51 minutes before the newscast, it was 6 o'clock news only at that time. They said, I saw that the NFL players called a strike. Now I have to make some phone calls I was the lead story of the newscast on my first night in television. Wow. So that was the day that Dick Vermeil ripped me too, at the Maxwell Club. It was a luncheon at that time. So all those things, September 20th, 1982, a date that I will never forget. But you mentioned John DeBella, and I worked with him for about a year when the station wanted to do what they called sports rock. They tried something, it didn't work. And then I went back to WIP. But it's the two most important people would be Jim O'Brien and George Michael, because they were very influential in molding what I was in terms of the work and the things that you had to do to be good. I remember Jim O'Brien, grabbed me by the throat one time because he knew I got sloppy doing what I was doing. And I had no problem with it. He was right. He says, you better work hard all the time. And if you don't, just get the hell out of here. And I never forgot that. So there's people. Jim O'Brien always said, and I've got interns that have worked with me that have become very successful in the business. Chris McKendry, if anybody follows tennis, worked for ESPN for years. She worked her way up in television. She was an intern for me at Channel 29, and she's now on the board at Drexel. She played tennis at Drexel.
That's right.
So she still does tennis she's over in Australia right now, doing tennis for ESPN. And then there were producers. Kevin Nagandi at ESPN was an intern for me when I was at Channel 10. So, but Jim O'Brien always said, always help people that want to help themselves. And when somebody sees that, people usually help them. And I always tried to do the same thing. So I mean, just that those people are really important, influential to me.
Howard, I think I have to chime in here because I wanted to drop this on you. I don't know if you remember, but this always struck a personal moment for me. But of course, about 13 years ago, when my mother, Phil's sister, had passed, you would come and stop by to pay your respects to Phil, which meant a lot to our family. But that also blossomed into me getting an opportunity to intern with Fox 29 back in 2015. And it was a formative experience for me through college as I kind of underwent my sportscasting career. And I know you mentioned former interns. I had to drop that on you. I know you've seen so many over the years, but I was actually among those ranks. And it's so funny that so many people have always kind of wondered, like, oh, what's Howard Eskin like? You know, he's so brazen on the air. And I was like, he's actually a really nice guy when you get to talking to him. You know, he definitely hams it up for the camera a little bit, but you know, it always made me laugh. Like it is a bit of a character at the end of the day, but you know, there's good intentions through and through.
Well, I will say this: one of the first questions that people ask for people that say they know me is he really a bleep hole? And people that know me say, no, he's not. But on the air, people misconstrued honesty. And I'll use Allen Iverson's line. I was always keeping it for real, for real. And you've got to do that to be honest with yourself. If you soft pedal and you just kiss somebody's rear end and it doesn't work that way. I mean, there's certain times where you got to tread softly, and there's certain times when you can go after it. But I was opinionated. People misconstrued my opinions, and they were based on a lot of information and facts that I had. It's not like talk radio today. Talk radio today is just a yell fest. It's just a good cop, bad cop. That's why they have two people in the studio. Well, you did before the show. Well, you take this side and I'll take this side, whether you believe in it or not. But I always had to believe in what I said on the air. And there's times when my opinions were incorrect. And if it was about a player, I would sit down and I would never shy away from a player. And I would always say, hey, listen, if you want to talk, I'm happy to talk with you. Tug McGraw came after me, which Jared, you won't remember him, but Phil does. He was the relief pitcher on the Phillies 80 World Series team, and he was with the Phillies for quite a few years. I actually know his son, Tim, who said, my father always said a lot of good things about you. Really? But he came after me in the locker room one time, and then, just, hey, listen. So I wrote him a note. And this is why I said what I said. And it was the year after the Phillies won the World Series in 80, where he was more worried about, endorsements and appearances, I thought, than, doing the best he could on the field. We talked it out and we were fine after that. But you have to be honest, number one, with yourself. And it's not just it's just not throwing it out there just to be, the bad guy. But the thing is with people now in sports and in talk radio, I call them hit and run drivers. If they criticize somebody on the air, then they run. They never see the person. They never go to a locker room. They rarely go to games. And that's just the way. It's unfortunate. I thought it was fun to go to games. Yes. And I thought it was fun to talk to players and coaches. That's how you get information. That's how you get to know people. So I always enjoyed that part of it.
How about a twofold question here? Most intriguing interview you've ever done, and the interview that you wish you could get. Is there a guy that's gone or a woman, a coach, player? So the most intriguing one you've ever done, and the one that maybe got away.
I've done so many, and I don't call them interviews, Phil. I call them conversations.
Conversations.
I call them conversations because you just going back and forth with somebody. I had Muhammad Ali when he was still boxing on the air with me. And I'll never forget that. But back then, it was on the first FM station. He was training in, Deer Lake, I think is where he used to train in Pennsylvania. And I had him on, and he was Muhammad Ali. It was crazy. I had Jack Nicholson on an interview when the Sixers were in the finals in '83. It's just, there's so many. It's hard to narrow. I mean, Barkley was always fun because Charles would never hold back, as you well know. So he was always fun. I can't think of. There's probably some that I can't remember because I've done so many. Now you're going to force me to think about it, and it's hard. Those are the ones that come to the top of my mind right off the bat. And Jack Nicholson was Jack Nicholson. Muhammad Ali was Muhammad. There's no pretext. There's nothing phony about the way they were. That's who they were, and I knew that. So that was really great. Now the one that I wish I could get, I've gotten so many that I don't know. Michael Jordan never did interviews. I knew Michael through Charles, and I don't know that I don't think they're still not talking to each other. Michael Jordan just took everything too personally. He was really a good guy early in his career, and now he's just bigger than life, and he treats it that way. You can't be like that with people. That's just the way I knew and know Michael Jordan. But he never did really interviews with anybody. Not that would have been great. Right. You want somebody that's honest, conversational.
Yes.
And the ones that I can think of were honest and conversational. I'll tell you, this wasn't supposed to be an interview. Terrell Owens, he was back and forth, boy. He was back and forth with everything. So you loved him. And like everybody, I got to know him in the locker room. And then I criticized him for what he did. And all of a sudden, after 1 year, he wanted more money. So he was no longer with the team. And I was at a Super Bowl party. It was in Miami. And we were there. He's with the Dallas Cowboys. And I said to him, he came up, he looked at me. I said, "You're going to screw up the Cowboys too. I just give it some time." So I started, when I came back to Philadelphia, I was doing a show, and it was a remote at the car show, as it turns out. It was a remote. And the producer says, a guy who says it's Terrell Owens is on the phone and wants to talk to you. He called in on the regular caller line. So he must have heard me with the story of me criticizing him at the Super Bowl when I said something to him, and he called in. So I told the producer during a break, I says, "Put him on the air. I'll know if it's T.O." So he puts him on the air, and sure enough, it was T.O. He says, "I hear what you've been saying about me." I says, "Yeah. And what is it that you disagree with or don't like?" We went for 26 minutes just going after each other, telling him what I didn't like about him, what he didn't like about me. And I went through the commercial breaks. I just said, "Let it go. Just keep on going." And I'll never forget that. And I knew the time. It was 26 minutes of us going back and forth at each other, not with each other, at each other. He left it, and he's seen me at Super Bowls, and he comes up and says hi, and it's just, he's fine. He's a different kind of guy, but I'll never forget that. He called in. That wasn't a scheduled guest, but it was really pretty good.
It's another example, King, for the, like, every player and every coach will say, "I never read anything that was written," when newspapers were a thing, and I never listen. They listen to everything, or they have a guy who's listening and says, "This is what was said." And that to me has always made me laugh. I have to, because I put you on the expert panel, the Philadelphia fan base. What is it that's different? How would you describe it?
Overreactionary. Is that a proper word? Overreactionary almost all the time. here's what, and it stems from Eagles fans. And, Phillies fans, the Phillies right now, and I got along and get along with Rob Thompson. But when he said, for all those people think we're rolling it back, we're not rolling it back. We have 20 to 22% new players. Well, the players are like nothing players. It's like middle relievers, a right fielder that may be better defensively than Castellanos, but I don't know that his numbers are going to be that much better. Whatever. The infield's the same. So I went on one of my shows and I said, Rob, you're right. You're not rolling it back. You're not as good as you were last year. So those are the kind of things that you've really, you got to be honest about. But Phillies fans take offense to it. Now, most Phillies fans now, they're different than Eagles fans. Eagles fans, 90% of the time, defend the Eagles, whether they're good, bad, whether the quarterback's good or bad, whether they always blame the coaches. Coaches always get blamed. And with the Eagles, they never blame the players. And actually, I guess that's the way it is with most teams, not all teams. But Eagles fans are delusional in many cases. They're probably one of the top 3 in passion in the country, but they might be at the tops of being just out of touch. I say things because I know things. It wasn't the offensive coordinator's fault. You'd say that and people would come after me. I mean, I know what the problems were, and I can't talk about everything because I was told in confidence. But it wasn't the offensive coordinator. They went into a game with like 25 plays. That's all. You have 150. You probably go into a game with 70. They went in with 25. So when they say, well, it's so predictable, that's because they couldn't. I'll just say they couldn't go in with more plays. So, but people didn't want to hear that. Oh, but people come after me when I criticize the Eagles. And it's just, well, it's just, you're not on the sidelines now, so you criticize. No, I'm always honest. You got to be honest, because if you're not honest with yourself. And there's things that went on, and I got criticized by people for saying things there when I was still on the sidelines, but I wasn't over the top. I was just pointing out certain things. So whatever the case, it's just the fans are different and different. I don't understand Sixers fans. I don't understand them at all. It's just, they're not good enough. This is what I say about the Sixers. Sixers are 3 to 4 years away from being 3 to 4 years away from being 3 to 4 years away. That's what they are. 2 bad contracts that are a joke that they should never have signed Paul George, who the Clippers were going to give him 2 years only to keep him there, just to keep some kind of continuity. Sixers gave him 4. Nobody else was offering more than 2. Joel Embiid was hurt when they gave him a 4-year contract. Joel Embiid's not the same player. I know things about Embiid. He cares about himself. He doesn't listen to the coach at least 50% of the time. He doesn't really care about his teammates, although he'll tell you that he does. And he's almost never in the kind of shape that you need to be in. Jokic is the example of, here's a guy that early in his career was a little too heavy. He got himself in shape, and every year he's the MVP. Even when Joel Embiid won the MVP, Jokic was the MVP, and they ended up winning the championship that year. Denver did. So when you say those things, I said, and people killed me. It was at least 3 years ago. I said they should trade Joel Embiid. Oh, wait. I said they're never going to win with him. They're never going to win with him, because I had insight from people on the way he was. I mean, there's times when the coach tells him to go in the game, he won't. There are times when the coach tells him to come out of the game and he won't. So the coach is the coach. The coach is, as you know, is the boss. It's easier to deal with college players. Well, maybe not as easy today because they're getting paid so much money, but it was easier to deal with college players. But people just crushed me. So I don't, and now they're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. Embiid will score 30 points and he'll get 6 rebounds. The last time I checked, he was 7-2, and he got 6 rebounds. I mean, come on now. I mean, that's a joke. But the thing is, they're kind of caught in between. Phillies fans are kind of caught in between. The Eagles fans, it's one way or no way. and it's a different kind of fair. And the Flyers it's a cult. And the Flyers, I thought the Flyers were the next team, excluding the Eagles, to win a championship. They've gone through a really bad spell, but I love the coach. I love the general manager, and I love the president, Rick Tocchet, Danny Briere, and Keith Jones. I think they're doing a great job, but they're not ready yet. And it's not going to be anytime soon. But this team, I don't think is going to have a championship or these teams in this city, a championship for a while. But the fans will, to be a fan, you believe.
Yes, sir.
That's all right. So you got to believe. You got to believe.
I've always said this. They're really not bad losers. They're insufferable winners in this town, right? Because look, the Eagles sold out all those times, right? How about back when you waited? What was it, Tuesday or Wednesday, when they would announce if there was a local blackout?
Yeah.
You never had that in Philadelphia because the fans showed up.
I know it was great. I mean, I've heard fans yell at players. There was one game I remember they hit me. They didn't hit the players. So they threw things. And then they'd yell at me because the players would ignore them. And I tried to ignore them. It's just unbelievable. But it's just. But they are vicious. They are vicious. One series, the Eagles will go 3 and out, and they're booing. They're brutal. They're unbelievable. Yep. But I've heard some things come out of their mouth. It's incredible.
We have I have tremendous admiration because of how far back we go, but your charitable work, how did you take that on? It is truly a responsibility, being a Philadelphian, and that's how I started with your introduction. The work that you do with charity, and was that natural to you? Was that measured in any way?
I remember, I think I used to help, but I was at an event with Julius Erving one time, and I think his sister had lupus, and it was a fundraiser for lupus. And he said to me, and I got along with Doc really well, obviously. He gets along with, I don't know how you can't get along with him. But anyway, he said to me that night, he says, we have a platform. Obviously, his was much, much, much bigger than mine because it was early in my career. We have a platform and we should use it to help people. And I never forgot that. I never forgot that. It had to be 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I always tried to do that. Helping people is important. If I have the platform, and I had the platform to do it, whether I produce my bobbleheads, which are up there in the background, up on the shelf, 2 bobbleheads, which I raised $70,000 for charities over 2 years. I was the leukemia man of the year because I raised the most money of anybody so you just try to help. But the Eagles have the Autism Challenge. I've raised over $700,000 in the first 4 years for autism. So members of my family are on the spectrum, but I didn't do it for that. I did it because it helped people. I remember one father called me up on the air, and his son was, I don't know how you talk about it. It's really deep into the spectrum, I guess I'll use that phrase. And he said he has to feed him. He loves him. And he got me to cry on the air because he told me how important it was with what I was doing to try to help people whose families, and it's the families that feel it the most, yes. Whose families. And I saw people at different events, and, I could see that they were really, really appreciative. So you just try to do what you can as much as you can. You can't do everything, but you try to help wherever you can. You name a charity, I've probably helped in raising money for that charity. So Coaches versus Cancer. I mean, that's really important. Cancer is really, my accountant just found out he's got stomach cancer. They say the prognosis is going to be okay, but when you know people, whether it's family people or friends or whatever it is, you always try to help. My accountant's a LaSalle guy, so don't be offended by that. It's just, the colleges, there's so many different ebbs and flows
Yes.
with what goes on in college. Jay Wright we know not was the best, he is the best. And I know you two guys are still close friends, and Jay's the best. I mean, but Jay will help whenever he can. I saw him at a function. It's just, but there's people that you admire for doing that. And I've always tried to do that. So it didn't start, but I'll never forget what Julius Irving said to me about helping people, because we have the platform to be able to do it.
Beautifully stated. Beautifully stated. All right. There's young people, Howard, that you early on went after and made it your mission to get focused on where you wanted to go. What would you tell a young person out there? It may be TV, it may be radio, it may be podcast, it may be what would a young person emulate from you in pursuit of their passion?
Well, it's a different world now, but the one thing I've always told people, number one, you got to be responsible. Got to be responsible, because then you're ahead of 50% of the people in the workforce, or people that want to be in those positions. Responsible, work hard, never think it's too much work. If you work hard trying to achieve what you're trying to, responsibility and hard work are the two things. Now, as far as the business, it's unfortunate that radio and television is a dying business now. Podcasts are really the future. And that's what there's 2 automobile manufacturers that are going to eliminate AM, FM radios from their cars, because people just plug in to listen to podcasts anyway. So it saves the consumer money, and it saves them money in producing the car. When you consider how many, I guess, hundreds of thousands of cars that manufacturers produce, it saves a lot of money. But they're doing it because who listens to AM radio anymore? I mean, tell me, who listens to AM radio? It's ridiculous, because the Phillies, when there is teams on AM radio, you would listen, but none of the teams are on AM radio anymore, so there's no reason to listen. And most AM frequencies have switched to FM, because it's a graveyard in AM. Now, what's happening with radio is less and less people are listening, because they're listening to podcasts. That's the new media. But that doesn't mean you should stop trying. And
Right.
Here's another thing I tell people. In television, I mean, I took a salary that when I was named the main sportscaster at Channel 3, I just took whatever they offered me. I had an agent. Didn't matter. I says, whatever they offer you is fine. It's just, at this point, that's what I want to do, and I'm going to do it. And it wasn't about money. I'll tell people this, and it was many years ago. I worked my second radio station that I ever worked for $1.60 an hour. You heard me right. $1, that was the minimum wage. But I got a $50 gift certificate to a delicatessen in Atlantic City. So I was tickled pink. But it didn't matter. And here's another thing I'll tell people. When you go to a station, now, if you don't have experience and you're new or you're early in your career, and you have a number in your head on what you want to make, they're going to pay you whatever they want to pay you. So you can tell them your number till you're blue in the face. It's an old term, but it's still accurate. You can tell them whatever you want. They're going to pay. If they want you, they're still going to pay you what they want to pay you. Now, when you've had experience, you have a little bit of leverage, but the business is not what it used to be. The money is not the same. So accept what they're going to pay you to get your foot in the door. And it may not be the specific job that you want. And I know I've done that a few times. I mean, as an engineer, I wanted to be in sports, and then there was a sports opportunity that opened up, and but you just take what you can to get in the door, so people can see what kind of worker you are, how responsible you are, And then things open up and you say, I'd like to be able to work in the sports department. So don't always pigeonhole yourself, if it's a television or radio station, into doing what you think, what you know that you eventually want to do, because once you get in the door, get some experience, and you never know what happens with that. It worked for me. I was spinning records,
Yep.
and I ended up getting into something that I wanted to do. It was fine. It was okay. I was a disc jockey at one point. I was, read the news on radio station. I did whatever I had to do to get in the business, and that's important. But take what you can.
Yes.
But it's a hard. Hey, listen, if you can get a job in television, and they say, well, we don't have an opening in the sports department, you can work in this department, take it. If they're going to offer you a job just to get some experience, and then to build on that, and then you can kind of see what the landscape is, and if podcasts are going to be the future, podcasts are going to be the future. The podcast that I have now, and I got, it was done wrong at WIP. I mean, they've laid off 500 people in the year 2025. That company laid off fired basically 500 people. And it's wrong what they do, because there's no loyalty anymore. So you gotta, that's as you well know, Phil,
Yes.
There's no loyalty. It doesn't matter how many hours you gave, how hard you worked. I helped the sales department. I made phone calls to businesses where they couldn't get through, where I got through, but that didn't matter to them. And they created this fake narrative, and that was the end of it. So you got to move on. You get what you can out of them. And they didn't even want to contribute to my medical insurance, which they had to. And that was a disgrace. So I got an attorney. But the thing is, you got to move on and try to make the best of it. And the podcast that I have, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, since my 1 year anniversary of my podcast is coming up on February 4th. And that's the 1 year anniversary. And the numbers, I have people, a woman works on the website and all those kind of things. The numbers are unbelievable, and it's good. So I'm not looking to get rich. I'm looking to have fun. If you're not having fun, you're not trying hard enough.
Stay active, right? Stay
Yep.
active. So we always end this segment with this question: who's made a difference in your life, Howard Eskin?
Well, I've already told you about one person, Jim O'Brien. Without Jim, I wouldn't. May he rest in peace. I'll never forget the day he died his parachute didn't open. He died in a parachuting accident. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was at the Eagles game in the press box. It was before the game. I mean, I think I cried for days. He was so influential. But certainly your parents, because if you're not brought up right, and you learn that sense of responsibility. My mother was the tough one. My father, every once in a while, stepped in, but my mother was the tough one. So I don't think it's ever one person, Phil.
Okay.
I don't think it's ever one person, because it's good that you have multiple people in your corner. But obviously my parents, I'd have to say my parents, with the way I was raised. I worked at gas stations pumping gas. I did whatever I could, because I was a busboy and a short order cook at the department store called S. Klein, which was on the Boulevard, right at Cotman and the Boulevard. I don't even know I think there's a department store there now, but I don't know. It's a Roosevelt Mall. So I did that. I did whatever I could, before I started to try to get better jobs, because those are real jobs, and people have to do those jobs. They are real jobs. So, but I would say my parents, and then Jim O'Brien, and then George Michael. I don't think it's ever one person. That's a really tough question, Phil, because there's people that are really important, and you think of those people, but you never want to exclude all the people that have helped you. And that's important too. And I don't know, Phil, did you ever yell at me when you were a coach? Probably did.
No, absolutely not. I have always marveled uh, marvel's the wrong word, but I've always scratched my head when people would say, "Verse the media," and I'd be like, "They have a job." And to be honest with you, there's a relationship there that in tough times, like if obviously there are hard things that happen in your own program, but if you can call on a guy and say, "Listen, yes, this is true. We just need a day and a half. We need to clear some things with the family, with school, legal, whatever it would be." Like I never I never felt, and I speak like Jay Wright the same way, and Dump, they would say, "Man, it was great to coach in a pro town." And I'd be like, and I went to Michigan and I saw the same thing. Like people want to cover things that are successful and they have a job to do. Why would we make their job harder because they could make our job harder? I never understood it. And I'm delighted to call you a friend. And I know that if I pick up the phone and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" It would be done in the snap of a finger. And I hope you feel the same this way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's, you get to know so many people over time, and it's important. I've been lucky enough. You've been on my podcast. I've been lucky enough to have people because I created a friendship with them.
Yes.
Whether it's Andy Reid, whether it's you, John Harbaugh's coming on. I don't know when this will air, but this Wednesday, John Harbaugh is, I'm sure he gets many requests, but I've known John since he was a special teams coach with the Eagles and stayed in touch over the years. And that's just, it's just the kind of thing
Yes.
where you get to know people.
Yes.
And here's the one thing I'll always tell people: never count. Well, hey, listen, people call me up. I haven't heard from in a few years and they need tickets or haven't heard from in a few years. Well, I did this for, you know what? It's not about counting.
Yep.
It's about you do things regardless of whether they've done this or you've done this or the numbers are whatever it is. If you believe in those people and those people are your friends and those people have helped you in situations, it's not about how many times, it's about that they've helped you. And it's never a count. I never count with friends, never count.
Phone for both of us works both ways, whatever you need.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You've made a difference.
Well, I'll tell you what, so have you and you guys, and obviously you're trying to help people make a difference. Hey, listen, what are we here for if we're not making a difference in some way, somehow?
Amen.
Really think about that.
Amen. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Howard. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Really, really good to hear from the King there. I mean, a guy who's been doing it for a long, long time in Philadelphia. And look, you heard it there. No shortage of opinions from him.
No. But that is true Philadelphia. Like everybody has an opinion and you're going to hear it too. Like we're not going to hold it in. We're not going to op-ed it. We're going to let you know. And
whether you ask for it or not, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And the names, isn't it fascinating? Like arguing with Earl Monroe. Who would have thunked that one? And then you being stumped, not knowing Earl Monroe went to John Bartram High School.
I wasn't familiar with Earl Monroe, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Earl the Pearl.
I didn't know the name. I just vaguely knew the name. I mean, we're going a little while back.
That was a while back, but the King in the media and all of those names, and he mentioned coaches. So it's time to do the coach's corner. And interestingly enough, in scripting the coach's corner idea, the season goes on. You get into these periods in any sport, and you're 6 weeks from like the golden era for college basketball. And I thought of this. All of us, whatever aspect of coaching we are involved with, we have to really focus on relationships. coach to coach, the people you're working with, build on that relationship. Sometimes when you're together every day and it's intense, there can be some friction, but you want to build a positive relationship with your coaches, with your opponents. The key to that relationship is respect, right? You want to give respect, you then get respect, but you have to give it to get it. Do that with your opponents. With your players, you want to like your players. You want to like your players so that you can teach your players and then grow into loving your players. Those that run around and say, I love well, do you really, and today in college basketball, getting to know them is important. So like them, teach them, love them. A relationship with the game, right? We're just talking basketball here because that's the corner that we've taken. But whatever your game is, fall in love with that game. Fall in love with that game. Don't like it. A lot of people can like it. Those that get separated love what they're doing. You cannot lose sight of the impact your relationships have, positive and negative. Be a relationship developer, nurturer, and grower. This game, any game, should give you memories and relationships. Don't lose sight of that.
I want to kick this back to you because I think you brought up an interesting point. I mean, so many coaches will, of course, nurture, develop that relationship with their staffs and the people around them. But you mentioned building that relationship with your opponents. I mean, it's really a fraternity of basketball coaches across the country. I mean, how important is it to maintain a good relationship? Like, yeah, for 40 minutes, you want to kick that guy's butt. But outside of that, it's so important to maintain a relationship with these opponents, because they're brothers at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, and the thing, Howard brought it up a little bit, like you stay connected with people. Don't just be somebody that calls when you need something. But as you pay attention, guys going through a rough patch, you hit him a text, you hit him a call. Nobody wants to hear from anybody when they're in a rough patch. Right? The same as like when you congratulate them, hey, I saw your score, big win, or checking on you. Because you know what? When the spring comes around, the summer comes around, the fall comes around, and you might be involved in a charitable endeavor, you might hit them with, hey, you think, first, can I do anything for you? Right. And then come back and somebody will say, yeah, you know what? We're not keeping score, but you were always there. That is a tremendous sentence to hear. You were always there. And we can't let this pass without talking about coaches versus suits and sneakers weekend, Catholic schools week, but we'll get into that with where I'm going. But where I've been, where have I been?
Only you know, man.
Only I know. So let's just do the highlight. Minnesota, Nebraska, 11 o'clock tip in Minneapolis, where I was there for 40 hours. The highest temperature that I saw was -1, down to -9.
That's
People in
brutal.
the streets voicing their opinions, making it known what's going on is not right. They were still on the streets, got to the game, had a chance to do the game at the barn. Nebraska 19-0 against the Minnesota team that had lost 4 straight, 1 on the last second shot, 2 in overtime. They were ready to go. And in the first half, up 38-30. And then Nebraska put on a performance. It was really beautiful basketball. at both ends of the floor. But then getting home, it became planes, trains, and automobiles. Get to the airport. Going to take the last flight that will go anywhere on Saturday night. It's canceled to Philadelphia. Regroup. Decide I'm going to go through Baltimore. Right? But VCU is at Davidson. I'm watching it as Gamecast on my phone. So I can't watch it live. I'm watching the line scores. They call my group. I get on the plane. And I look at the stewardess and I say, "You're not going anywhere yet, are you?" And I stood in the whatever they call it, and I watched the last second and a big VCU road victory. Got to Baltimore, had a train scheduled to go to 30th Street, was too late for that, rented a car, drove to Philadelphia, where my car was from when I left town, made the exchange, and walked into the house sometime around 3 a.m. The other thing that happened last week that's really cool and connected to make a difference was I got to go to the Philadelphia Sports Writers Dinner, where they honored our man Juan Naaman as the most courageous person in sport. His speech was exquisite, brought the room to a standstill, and we have to congratulate Juan. We are with you, brother.
Such an awesome guy. I mean, he's been on the show twice now. He is the embodiment of making a difference.
No question about it. And for all the right reasons. And his family was so proud. And man, I'm delighted that I was able to get there. And now it starts. Think about what we have going on. Suits and sneakers weekend. So I'm hoping that we can look out there and see coaches in suits with their sneakers. I will be doing that when I go to 2 VCU games this week, and I'll be broadcasting a game. So I'm going to wear sneakers. The second thing is Catholic Schools Week. I had an opportunity to have on my schedule a couple of different stops to celebrate Catholic schools. And then they get hit with snow day Monday, cold Tuesday. So we'll see how they make that up. But we want to salute all those Catholic schools out there. I'll be headed to Richmond for a Richmond VCU game. Then going to D.C. for a DePaul at Georgetown game. Have a wonderful opportunity in Oaks, Pennsylvania to give a talk, SEI talk. SEI, the company. I'm going to give them a corporate talk, firing up that group. Hopefully getting back to Richmond in time to see Philip Stevens' collegiate team play. Then we have VCU Loyola, late game on Friday night. Then possibly some grandchildren playing a game. But prepping for next week's podcast, we're going remote again. And the one other thing that is going on, salute to Danielle Parker, who does our marketing. Again, the Martelli Minute
Newsletter.
And if you're interested, just send us your email on some of the sites that Jared will mention here shortly, and we'll get it to you. 3 ways to lead with action. The most recent podcast is on there. From the road, where have we been? So we continue, and we're trying to touch as many people as we can. And then this is the bye week in football. So we don't have much to talk about that, but we are definitely all go Rams.
Always go Rams.
Always go Rams.
Always go Rams. If you're looking to make a difference with Phil, head on over to pnjmakeadifference.com. You can learn more about the newsletter there and also get signed up and keep up to date with everything that he has going on in his busy schedule. We are at Make a Difference Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, at Make a Diff Pod on X, Make a Difference with Phil Martelli on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, go ahead and give us that 5-star rating. We would greatly appreciate it. If you're looking for the Martelli Minute, that is at Phil_Martelli. And that is all we've got there. Our thanks again to Howard Eskin, who was a real treat with many stories. That guy's lived a life for sure. But I guess all we got to leave with is go Rams.
Go Rams.